Hello, everybody. Welcome to another pitch in the car, part of the Requel podcast series here on my YouTube. I'm just sitting here thinking about Superman, and the movie's coming out, and on my base podcast, the Krypton Report, James and I years ago did a pitch for what our Superman sequel would be, and this was right at the time of BVS, before Justice League, and our pitch was on what could have been in between BVS and Man of Steel, and I've hinted at this pitch over time of what my Superman movie would be. Now, with James Gunn's new film approaching, I just thought I'd go ahead and pitch my idea just to get it out there and talk about it. So here we go. We know that James Gunn's film is not an origin story. When it was originally discussed and pitched, it was Superman Legacy, which I like the idea of that title, because I just feel like it gives it some sort of, reboot. But at the same time, my pitch for a film was always just Superman, because we all know that the first film with Christopher Reeve was Superman the movie, and it's often referred to as either Superman the movie or Superman 78. Now the new film is just Superman, and it's also being Superman 25, and I feel like it's hard sometimes to just say Superman because it is the name of the character. Like, we'll throw it over, like Batman has been called Batman 89. Even though there's no other movie named Batman, it's just in the the discussion, 89 or Batman 89 is taken over, and then we have the Batman, which is fine because the distinguishes it. Now, the Superman would not work, but I always if I'm gonna do a reboot, it's gonna be titled Superman, plain and simple. So that was my operating name title for a while. But my idea is taking from two of the most popular, more current continuity and non-continuity, I guess, depending on where you're coming from, origin books, being Superman Birthright and Jeff Johns' Superman Secret Origins. So you have two great prolific writers, Mark Waid and Jeff Johns, that I'm really going to pull for my story. And I'm also going to say, if there's a film reference, it would be, I think Superman Man of Tomorrow actually does really well in my idea mode, okay? My pitch would start as Clark is a young boy, about 8, maybe 10 years old. He's sitting in a wheat field or a recently harvest. He's sitting in a recently harvested cornfield or wheat field with his dog, Shelby, and they're watching the sunrise. And he's sitting out there, and he hears something in the distance, and it's a car screeching, and he takes off and runs. And what it is Lana Lang and her family driving early in the morning before school, and they're in a car wreck, but we see Clark show up and save everybody before anyone's hurt, and Lana kind of sees him a little, and then he runs off, and then we cut to Jonathan and Martha in the home yelling upstairs, "Clark, time to get up for school," and he comes in the back door, and his clothes are torn and dirty, and he's like, "Let me explain." And they're both looking at him kind of shocked, and then it says title Superman, and then we cut to him on a bus in Africa as a young early 20s journalism student. And this is where I'm borrowing from Birthright. I love the part in the early Birthright, I've talked about this before, is I love Birthright, and I like the ending a lot, but I also am going to borrow from the idea of a small scale. And we'll talk about that as I get into this more, but this is where we have the Kobe situation, where Clark is in Africa watching this man rise as a political leader, and he's studying journalism. We see that he's a college student, but he's online. I really think that with today's technology, I think Clark being an online student gives him a little bit of an anonymity and a little bit of detachment too. So it allows him to travel and explore and do his studies and his work anywhere in the world. And we see him corresponding and writing for freelance for different papers and the school paper and things, and sending articles in, and especially what he's covering here. And the scene would play out much like it does in the book, with Clark witnessing the horrible assassination on Kobe, and it really ignites in Clark this stronger desire to step out and do something more, because here was just a man who was standing up, knowing that he was, in debt, and he could be murdered, and it happens, and Clark kind of reveals his powers and stuff during when Kobe, is shot, but Kobe, hits at, hey, save other people, and Clark does it, and then through Kobe's death, the people are able to rise up, overthrow the warlord, and it's Kobe's sister that takes on the mission. Then Clark returns to the farm, and while returning to the farm, similar beats like Birthright, where he starts, he is approaching graduation, and he's looking for a job. Both the Kents would be alive, throw that out there, and he's trying to decide how he wants to help people. And he wants to help people, and he's going to go to the city, and it's him, his dad, and Martha, on the farm, talking about how to disguise, how to walk, posture, the glasses, the hair, everything he does. And that's how they start to develop his disguise. He'll also have a run-in with Lana Lang, and it'll pull a little bit from Superman for All Seasons, with their conversation about her once she knew, and about the history of how Clark and Lana were always best friends who were attracted to each other, but just couldn't make it work. There was always a little hesitancy, but they have this deep feelings for each other. And Lana was the first person he ever told about his powers, and she helps, talk to him about his future plan of what he's going to do. So then we go to Metropolis, when we have a little bit, I think, a cool scene of like montage almost, much like pulling this from Superman Earth 1, where we see that Clark is a very intelligent kid, young man, okay? He is smart. He can almost get any job he wants. His grades were high, and he's going in for these interviews, and he knows he can do these jobs, but he's turning them down because it's not about the job, it's not about the money, it's about the purpose of the job. And he has, of course, his journalism degree, and it's hard getting a break in the newspaper game and with news and resource, and we're seeing people that will reflect the modern day situations we have with news and technology. And Clark is trying to get in, and I think it would be great if he meets Jimmy Olsen. They bump into each other, trying to get a story. Clark is there watching. We have kind of our mid-action point where Clark does something to save somebody small, kind of like the Superman or the New Adventure, kind of like a Lois and Clark, when Clark stops the bus, leaves the handprint kind of thing. Something along those lines. Runaway buses are always great for Superman, saving some people, and he's without trying to be seen. And he makes a friendship with Jimmy, and Jimmy's looking for a roommate, and Clark and him start to form a friendship. And then Jimmy, he's working as freelance, trying to sell pictures to the different newspapers. He had an offer for the Daily Planet. They bought one of his pictures. And then, of course, towards the end of the film, Jimmy gets the best perfect picture of Superman, and he leverages that for a staff job at the Daily Planet. And then we would meet. So Clark would then try to go with Jimmy to see about kind of doing the same thing through articles. And that's where we meet Lois. Big brash scene with her and Perry. Lois is, this is where I pull from Superman, Man of Tomorrow, young reporter. Not very well known. She's on her up and up, trying to make a name. She's at the bottom of the barrel. And we get to see that her dad's in town with one of his military soldiers, John Corbin. This is where I pull from the latter half, where he's in town, and this is, like I said, where I pull from Secret Origins. John is kind of the ideal son that Sam has, soldier, military man. But of course, John does have a past. We learned throughout that, he was juvenile delinquent, but he got off with the because of his intelligence and record. He was given an opportunity to either, basically jail or military service. He joined the military at 18, right as he turned 18, and has had an exceptional military record. And we see Lois rejecting John and his, advances that romantic relationship. One thing I always liked in Secret Origins, I do like that the second half, because if you look at that book, the first half is like a Clark story, the Legion, and then it's a Metropolis, but I like the smaller scale. And that's one big thing that I want to hit on in my pitch, is I do not want this big alien invasion. I do not want this big brass battle of epicness. One superhero film that I have a big respect for, and I referenced this in my pitch for Wonder Woman 3 years ago, which I need to put back up on Requel, was The Wolverine, because it was a personal story and the stakes were smaller, but yet you still felt the emotional and the impact on what needed to be done. So here is what I'm talking about, is we're introducing this superpowered hero. Now if you're asking me, Tyler, what about Krypton? No. I would completely leave Krypton out of my first film. My first film is the origin, smaller scale, and Clark has some idea that he's an alien. I mean, he knows he's an alien, okay? He's had that conversation with his parents. He has the ship. But he doesn't have the fortress yet. He hasn't really plugged into the ship yet, and we'll get there. So Clark is, has a meeting with Perry, and kind of gets the same spiel we've seen in other places with, can't afford it, can't do it, but if you can bring me something, maybe I'll print it, okay? I definitely have my Daily Planet staff. I think that's one thing that Gunn is doing that I'm very much looking forward to. Lombard, Troop, Cat, definitely want to have my Daily Planet rounded out. So Clark is now set up there. So he's trying to figure out a story, and he doesn't want to write about himself. As there's whispers of this big save that happened, and Jimmy's talking about it, he's like, I got pictures, and he really didn't get any pictures of anything. So what happens is, on the other side now, is we do have Lex Luthor. I think Lex Luthor is an amazing villain. I think he's an awesome antagonist because of what he represents. I would pull from the idea of everybody looking up at Lex. Nobody looks up in Metropolis except when Lex Luthor is sitting outside his tower. Everyone else, people's heads are down. And when Clark shows up, he's got that wide-eyed country boy in the city looking up and everything. We've seen that in the comics. Definitely going to have that in my film. But I would have Lex as this, he's the faux savior in the sense of, look to me to be saved. We learned that most everything in Metropolis is either owned or part of LexCorp, as he helped build the city of tomorrow. I always thought that using establishing shots and wide shots and imagery from Dubai would be great, because so much of Dubai looks futuristic in their buildings. For Metropolis, to really give it, like, this city is something, because Lex Luthor set up shop there and he has built this city up. And we have to have Lex as, you know, the egomaniac and everything he is, to where he is a villain, but the greatest thing is the cat and mouse between Superman and Lex, where so many people of the city look at Lex as the hero, as a great man, and you can't prove that he is doing the shady stuff that we all know that he is, because he's sneaking. His company has been working with chemicals and compounds, and eventually the villain would be Parasite. I think Parasite is a great villain to put Superman as a very kind of humanistic villain, where he has to battle without powers as well as with powers. I liked the idea of keeping it small. Once again, I thought about, again, you know, in Secret Origins, there's Parasite appears and so does Metallo. I like seeding Metallo, and what I would do is I would have Metallo show up, but he wouldn't be kryptonite powered. He would be more just exoskeleton suit Metallo, John Corbin, who would fight Superman, because kryptonite would not appear till the end of the film, after, you know what, alright, scratch that, I got this. Kryptonite is discovered because when Clark goes back home, he activates the ship. The ship then gives him the crystals and stuff, and what happens is it activates and creates kind of an energy. The energy pulse makes it so the kryptonite can be, like, is irradiated or discoverable. And we find that Lex in his lab has a bunch of meteor rocks from different things, and it comes alive, and the kryptonite all of a sudden starts taking on a different form, and Lex is experimenting with it and uses it as a power source to power the suit, but then later basically has to use it to power John Corbin after his first battle in the suit, where then he becomes more of Metallo Terminator style. We've talked about this before on the animated series. And, you know, you have your big battle with Superman coming out and fighting Corbin, because everyone's scared of this man, the Superman, who is powerful, and what does he do, and what's he here for? And, you know, we have this, not uneasiness, but no, people aren't sure what to make of him, but everything he does is good. Like when he has his big, you know, the big night reveal where he reveals himself, it's all like a montage of saving different things, much like we've seen in Superman the movie, because I think that is a great, just a great thing to have. But what he does is he goes back home, and when he's there with the ship, he finds, and I'm going to borrow from the New 52. I'm sorry, people, I know people hate this, and I'm going to borrow from My Adventure with Superman. He finds the emblem that recognizes him, his DNA, and he puts it on, and it grows, and he gets his suit, kind of a nanobot alien tech suit. All right, the cape is already there as a cape. It is in his as used as a blanket, and we'll touch on that here in a moment. And then Martha, just like in My Adventure, says something has to break up all this blue, and she makes the trunks. So there's Martha's contribution to the costume. All right, everybody with me? So he has the costume now. He goes back, and you know, he starts acting. He starts being a visual, because the city needs hope. They need someone to believe in. They need something. And there's nothing as great as a helicopter. I was thinking of some sort of bank robbers, right? Inter-gang bank robbers, okay? They don't have all the tech yet. They're just inter-gang before the tech. Robbing a bank, and this is where the police are in pursuit. We have Turpin and Sawyer en route. And while this is going on, there's helicopters from coming in and everything. from the news, the different news. And what happens is we see that there's actually a drone that's coming in to pick up the money or pick up the bank heist and fly them away. And big action set piece. And the helicopters actually end up getting damaged by the drone. And this is what puts Superman into action. He flies in. He saves the helicopter. Saves, of course, Lois on the helicopter. You have to do it. He saves her. She gets her first look. But he's moving too fast for pictures. Jimmy gets a blurry shot. Have to. Classic, right? And he saves, and then he flies in. He stops the bank robbers, and then he has a conversation with Sawyer and Turpin. And they're both, who are you? What are you here? And he's like, I'm a friend. I'm here to help. And he flies off. And people now are like looking up and watching. Like, what to make of this? Who is this person? And of course, you have all the news organizations try to get a picture. And it's a frenzy. Lex trying to prove it's a hoax. And then he's talking about, his super soldier and serum. No, I can't use that. But Lex is trying to talk about what they're doing at LexCorp to make humans great and improve lives, and the Superman thing, this whoever the savior is, it's not real. But then through an accident, we have Parasite, and Parasite appears, and Parasite, is Rudy Jones. I like the very, Rudy's a good guy, janitor, just trying to work, tragic figure. And he seeks out Superman because he senses the power. So then we have, Clark gets sick, and there's some awkwardness. Jimmy, I will have, figures it out. Being Clark's roommate, and he helps Clark as Clark gets sick. Jimmy figures it out. And the big confrontation was after Superman had battled Metallo in Metallo's regular armor, and Lex has put the kryptonite in him and all this. It's messed with John's brain. It's brought out his dark side, his ego, to where now he's a threat. And I would have Metallo. I'm wrestling with this, okay? So don't take this as a finite. But I would almost have that in our third act, Parasite goes for Metallo. And I would do Parasite more, not the creature where he looks like some sort of alien, like xenomorph looking thing, but he looks more like a man who is seeking energy. And I'll play around with the creature design, but Metallo almost killed Parasite by the poisoning of the kryptonite to him, because kryptonite's poisonous to humans. And, like I said, Rudy would very much be a tragic figure in this. And just kind of show the craziness of where John is going. And then, of course, he's in downtown Metropolis, and there's civilians getting damaged, and Superman comes, and he's hurt, and he's weak on power, but he still is able to stop Corbin. And he, like I said, he poses for the photo with Jimmy. And we get that. And then Lois names him Superman. And it's in the paper, and Jimmy gets a job. And Clark gets a job as an intern. Okay, Clark gets a job, very minimal, and he's still trying to pitch stories to Mr. White. And then, at the end of the film, we just see Clark flying out of Metropolis, and he's standing, looking at his ship, and he turns it on, and he kind of faces more of like he wants to learn more about the ship, because part of Clark's internal conflict has been afraid of who he really is. And the theme of this story, as I iron out all the details, is accepting who you are, embracing who you are. And it's a common theme. And it's a common theme amongst this style of character and everything. But I think with what Clark's going through, it would work really well. So that's kind of my pitch for Superman. Now, my sequel, because I feel like it has to work like this, my sequel is where we open with Krypton. We go back, we see Krypton, we see Jor-El, And my second film is my sci-fi adventure. This is my big film, okay? This is where we learn of Krypton. We see the rocket. And to pull from the New 52, we see Jor-El take his cape off that he wore and wrap his son in it. So that the cape that Clark wears is Jor-El's cape. I love that. I love that. And send him to Earth. And we see... And this is about Clark learning from the ship. In the sequel, the fortress would be built. And this is the one where we have your Kryptonian invasion kind of thing. This is the one where... And it's hard because we have had Zod now on film twice. In a very similar storyline. And of course, I don't know what would happen. So I'm torn between the idea of Zod and Brainiac. I want Brainiac in live screen, but I think Brainiac is the scariest villain when you think about how much of our world today relies on computers and systems, and Brainiac can stop all of that and take over everything we have on Earth. And I think Brainiac would be the better villain for the second one. And yes, we will do Brainiac for the second film. And Brainiac comes, and he's already on Earth. He's a businessman also, and it's a company that's trying to take over LexCorp or merge. It's been buying up other companies and is a tech mogul that almost rivals Lex Luthor. And that would be part of building up this trust for Superman. And then Brainiac comes out as this alien AI device. And you know what? I would even touch on our obsession with AI now and apps. And Brainiac is an app we all have on our phone that we use much like Siri and Alexa. And then it all turns against us. And you have Superman trying to protect, save, and stop this. And like I said, this is just the off the top of my head pitch for the sequel. But I always like the idea of the sequel being more of the sci-fi, big battle, alien invasion type thing. To where, because one of my issues with Man of Steel is, because of how it plays out, you can almost hate Superman because he brought the Kryptonians there. Superman the movie does it right by having the Kryptonians show up in the second one after that he's already built goodwill with people. And that's the same kind of beat that I'm going for. But instead of using Zod or any of that, I'm using Brainiac as this alien that reveals himself. And he's kind of playing the humanoid version of Brainiac versus we will have two versions of Brainiac, basically. More of the green biohuman that we've seen recently, like in Jeff Johns' Brainiac. And then more of the just cold robot that we've seen before. Because the cold robot is what the world is seeing as this alien entity that has arrived because of it's heard of the Superman or whatever, and it's here to help. And then after that robot's destroyed, we will eventually meet the real Brainiac, much like Brainiac Attacks. And going back to this plays into Krypton's origin is we will then get the bottled city of Kandor, where Clark will learn some more of Krypton. But what the difference I would have here is inside the bottled city is Zor-El and Zod. And during the machinations of the film, Zod escapes and is able to, like I said, the machinations, Zod grows full height and everything. It can be something as simple as if someone were to get out of the bottle, they would regain their size, okay? And set up Zod for a third film. Now, light pitch on the third film, and I think my second film would be called The Man of Tomorrow, Superman, The Man of Tomorrow, something like that, keeping with that flow and how Superman's kind of replaced Lex. And in people's eyes, but Lex is always trying to find a way to outdo Superman, because Lex will be in all 3 movies, because he is an antagonist that's always finding ways to force himself in and create things. Now, my third film was Zod showing up. I would pull from back to J. Michael Straczynski's Earth 1 series, Volume 3, I believe. I haven't read them in a while, and the last time I did, I read them all at the same time. Where Zod shows up, and he starts to play off as benevolent. He aligns with countries and people that don't like Superman without really giving away who he is. And then when he does meet Kal-El, he really does pitch to him as a brother, a friend, and he represents to Kal-El a Kryptonian connection. Kal-El has no idea what to do about the model city of Kandor that he has in the fortress, or who's in there, because everyone's in stasis, frozen. Zod escaped, like I said, through machinations in the second film.
Take exit 192 on the left to merge onto I-475 north toward Wami.
So, continuing with that, Zod presents himself as the savior. He wins over Kal-El's trust. They're buddies, and he's excited because he finally has a connection to Krypton, where he doesn't feel as alone. And part of the theme for this is realizing that family and belonging isn't always about your people, but you can find it with people that care about you, and making your own people, your own tribe, your own squad, whatever term you want to use, to where he has Jimmy, who's his best friend. He has Lana, and then through the movies, we're building up the Clark and Lois love story. And I would have them get together at the end of the second film. They kiss for the first time. And then the third film, he reveals that he's Superman to her. And that'd be part of the plot in this, as he really wants to be fully embraced by the people that he loves. And we have, him versus Zod. But Zod represents something, because Zod is doing things in the background to try and discredit Superman, make him look bad. When Zod reveals that he's actually a Kryptonian to the world, he comes as this benevolent Kryptonian who tries to use imagery and stories and stuff and basically painting Jor-El and his family as what Zod was on Krypton, and trying to win the world over. And that is part of the plot so it's down to Clark versus Zod in a big battle. Superman versus Zod as the Superman versus the anti-Superman, and Zod wanting to use his powers to rule. And then this is where we pull back to that John Corbin, who's been in prison and been trying to be rehabilitated. And this is where I would go back and I would start pulling. I would have Corbin appear in a small scene where Superman visits him in prison. And for Corbin's storyline here, I'd start pulling from what Philip Kennedy Johnson did, where we learn more about his tragic bout where, he did have problems because he was a juvenile youth, but he protected his sister, and he loved his sister, and his sister would be a play. And his sister's like, John, you have to help. And it would be Corbin that would show up and actually help defeat Zod and protect Superman and kind of redeem himself, and then die in the battle because he would basically explode the kryptonite, killing Zod, and Superman would be, hurt, but we would save Superman, and Corbin would go and die a hero, completing an arc. And one of the other things I would do is I would integrate Star Labs and start that in the second one, because the second one is more of my big sci-fi space odyssey film that would incorporate, like I said, a lot more of the Krypton storyline, as Clark discovers things in through the fortress being built out of the ship and everything like that. That is my pitch, kind of, that's been circling in my head for Superman, like my Superman film series. And I wanted to get that out there before we learn too much about what Gunn has in store. And I look forward to the new film, and I look forward to anyone's thoughts. I know this is a little bit longer of a story pitch, but, I'm discussing a trilogy that's kind of been in my brain for a little while. Let me know your thoughts. Subscribe to Requel. Check out our Krypton Report podcast on all podcast platforms. And we do a $1 Patreon where we review movies, we commentate, and have special $1 Patreon shows. $1 gets you a bunch of content every month from James, myself, and whoever joins us for all the fun. So take care.